Welcome to Project Teachers Lounge. So I say this to all my teachers, my K-12 teachers before I start. Thank you for your service as a teacher. I believe our teachers are our superheroes. Y'all are doing, some would say, the Lord's work if you believe in the Lord. But like y'all are doing a lot, especially during this pandemic. But on a regular school basis, y'all put in more than 8 hours a day. Y'all get this mad amount of disrespect from people thinking y'all don't do no work, and I just don't understand it. And so I just want to say thank you for being a superhero, for putting in the extra work to help our students become the leaders they will be in the future or whatever they decide to become, because y'all do have, in my opinion, the biggest impact on students outside of their parents. And if our parents are sending them down the wrong path with the wrong knowledge, with the wrong whatever it may be, teachers have the biggest possibility of changing them and sending them down the right way. So, Chidimma, thank you.
Oh, thank you. That was really sweet. One quick correction, though, not leaders of the future, leaders of now, because kids are the present.
What she said. And so to introduce Chidimma, Chidimma is an 8th grade, I believe, a history teacher in Memphis, Tennessee, the 901, Mem 10, whatever you want to call it. We went to Rhodes College together. She's probably the first, second, or third person I met at Rhodes, but the longest lasting, most influential relationship I have from Rhodes College. When you hear the phrase, "Was you with me shooting in the gym?" Chidimma was literally with me shooting in the gym, on the basketball court, and in Econ 100 my freshman year. We were struggling to pass that class, but somehow both managed to pass with at least a B. So
yeah, I don't know how that happened, because I think when we met I had an F and I was like, I don't care about this. But
yeah, that class was a struggle. But yeah, Chidimma has been in my life a long time and has been a very good part of my life. So I want to welcome Chidimma and thank you for this interview.
You're welcome. Likewise. Thank you for being great and doing this for teachers.
So Chidimma, how have you been?
I'm going to speak positively and say enlightened. That doesn't mean things have not been a struggle, but I do feel more enlightened, at least, about my education philosophy and just who I am as an educator.
Nice. And you as an educator, how that happened? How long you've been an educator? What got you into being an educator?
All right. So I've always been the person to like tutor and like help other people, whether it's my peers or whether it's younger people or younger Nigerians in my community here in Memphis. If I'm doing any community service, there's probably kids involved in some way, whether it's a community center. So for me, being both like a babysitter and doing all of that, I've always loved children. And at first I thought that would mean I would make a great pediatrician, but med school and being a doctor just wasn't it for me. So disappointment to my Nigerian parents, but greatness, because then I said, okay, well, what if I can work for the United Nations and help children with on an international scale, right? And helping students and children and being able to be there for women and children, whether it's working in NGOs or anything like that. That also didn't work out because I tend to be very drawn to security issues, and you can either be a good person or a bad person when it comes to security. So when I left Columbia and left the international security policy program there and realized that I genuinely did want to help women and children on the ground and go like into communities, I had to think about what I could do with that. So I reached out and I applied to different places. I applied to maybe helping with St. Jude Research Hospital here in Memphis and saying, okay, maybe I can help with the kids who, are going through this terrible diagnosis of cancer and cancer research and trying to do that. And then I realized, I was like, you know what? I really want to give teaching a chance, but I'm scared because I know nothing about teaching. I'm not one to do something I don't know. I like to be an expert. So it's like, I'm not going to just go in a classroom when I've never taught before. But I actually had a conversation with Russ Wigginton at Rhodes. I went to his office one day, happened to run into Dorothy Cox, who was one of my mentors there, and then had a conversation with Russ. And essentially both of them in both conversations said, you are actually more skilled at this than you think, and you have all these experiences that can culminate in you being a great educator. And like the one thing you have that most educators don't have is that drive to change the world and help kids. And so I was like, okay, this feels like when I was at Rhodes and they tried to make me take Chinese, and I was like, I know nothing about this, but I'm gonna try. So I applied, and I was fortunate enough to get employment at a charter school here, where the founder is actually a Rhodes alum as well. And so I did an interview. I had to make up a lesson from scratch and go teach a bunch of 8th graders. It's actually funny. I was applying for a 7th grade position, but had to teach 8th graders, and was like, okay, cool. And I did it. They loved what I did with that one lesson. They were like, obviously being a history major, you're really like intellectually equipped for this. You just need a few more moves to actually be an adequate, educator. So I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, for me to feel like okay with it, I also need to make a commitment to become a literal master at teaching. So within a week of getting the job, I applied. I actually missed the deadline to apply, but I appealed, and I was like, listen, I'm about to start this job as a teacher, and I will absolutely get a master of arts in teaching. And y'all are the only school that I can do this with and also work full time. So you got to make it work. So I actually started grad school a week before I actually started teaching kids, a week into orientation as a teacher. And I've been teaching for 5 years and also received my master's in 2018.
It's been 5 years already.
It's been 5 years. I know. That's that milestone where you decide, am I going to stay in the classroom, or am I going to go marry a billionaire? And
Well, first I want to say shout out to Dr. Russ Wigington, who was also like a mentor to me in college. Definitely led me down the right path on a lot of things. I think probably had a big influence on my first job out of college. And shout out to Dorothy Cox, who was my first boss out of college. So yeah, they were two amazing people who are no longer with Rhodes College, but were for a very long time, and definitely had a good impression on a lot of the black students at Rhodes College. And when you speak of Chinese, I remember you trying to teach me Chinese or like studying around me, and the only thing I remember is Wo Lao Sure. I have no idea what it means. That's the only thing I can remember.
Wo Lao Sure, my teacher.
Well, there you go. Okay, so let's talk about you teaching. What happened in March when the pandemic first hit? And yeah, I'll ask questions after that.
Okay, so technically the pandemic hit way before that, but lockdowns and quarantine started in March. So as we were trying to figure out what to do, a week before spring break, they started talking about, okay, this is getting serious. We're probably going to have to shut down schools. And I remember about 2 days before spring break. So spring break starts on a Friday, like afternoon. And then you have that entire next week off, and then you come back the week after. So that like Wednesday or Thursday, no, it was a Thursday. I was on my way to work. I was trying to get there early because I like had assessments and tests that students need to take. And I got a flat tire and on the way to work in the middle of nowhere. So I'm sitting there like, oh my God, flat tire. And as I'm like checking my messages and waiting for the people to come to me, I'm getting a bunch of messages on GroupMe, which is how we communicate. And it's like, okay, don't freak out. Don't let kids know, but we're going to have to close school today. And I was like, huh? Oh, there's only 1 day left before break. Like, well, what is going on? And they're like, Shelby County has decided to shut down schools because of the pandemic. Like, it's a major thing. It's literally a lockdown. That's almost nationwide. So that's what we're going to have to do. So the buses are not going to be running tomorrow. So kids are going home today. As a teacher, we don't know if kids are going to be going home for just a week or a longer time than that. So instead of that, like, usually for breaks, we give kids work to do. So each subject will give them like maybe a worksheet of like 2 pages, front and back. So 4 pages to keep them, their brains active during that time. And they're like, that's not going to work. You need more, because for sure we're going to be out for 2 weeks for spring break rather than 1 week. And I was like, 2 weeks? That's a long time. Side note, I had planned a trip to Nigeria. So me going to work early was a way for me to like get stuff done so that Friday I would go home, do the rest of my packing, and catch a flight Saturday morning. I get to work, and because I've missed everything literally, my co-teacher she's a first year teacher. I was training her, and so she didn't know what to do. So I ran to the copy machine. I literally pulled out of thin air like a week, 2 weeks, a month worth of stuff, and was like, this is what you have to do, kids, and then the rest of this can just be extra credit. I don't know what made me do a month, but I'm glad that I did, because as of that day, that Thursday before that spring break, students didn't come back to class again and still haven't. And so for the rest of the semester, I think we had 2 weeks, and then we extended for an additional 3 weeks. And I think spring break ended up being like an entire month, where instead of getting off in the middle of March and coming back like towards the end, students didn't come to school for the rest of March at all. They were in on Zoom, nothing, because we then had a 2 to 3 week turnaround to try to figure out how to do online learning. And because of that, I teach social studies or history. And so to them, or to the powers that be, and also the education system in general, it's one of the elective courses in life. I know, crazy to think that history is an elective, but it's not your core classes of like math and ELA. So our school decided, which there are feelings about that, to just have 2 classes for every grade level. And because my network has 2 middle schools, they combined both middle schools. So now you go from having students, like 100 students, 110 students, to having 200 students in one grade level on a Zoom call. And they're only getting math, science, and ELA. And ELA is a combination of history. So they called it humanities, right? So it's a combination of both history and English and writing. So that became the new norm. It was, I don't want to cuss because this is an educational thing, but it was a shit show. And we were using, I believe, Google Classroom. And so, like, I just remember trying to get 100+ kids, like, at least from my campus, just to log on to Google Classroom. So at that time, students didn't even have emails. They didn't have emails from my school. So it was one of those like, oh my gosh, how do we get all of this done? And kids have had no orientation. Kids don't have devices. It was literally one of those like, okay, well, we're just going to make it work. Kids still need to learn. And so the ELA teacher decided to do, she was like the lead teacher for 8th grade, and she decided to do a play. And so my role as a history teacher was then to not necessarily make everyday lessons, but try to figure out which specific parts of the lesson I could provide like historical context. So I was teaching history that's not in any of my standards. It was like way after my standards, but still relevant and like enlighten that experience of reading the play out loud, being able to discuss and saying, why is this happening? It was actually Raisin in the Sun, which is a personal favorite of mine. Shane, that I love reading. So I was not upset or like offended that I was an ELA teacher for that rest of that quarter and school year, but it was definitely different. There was no TCAP or the state testing. Kids did not necessarily get the education they would have gotten in person. And it was just different. It was just new for kids. And I think the saddest part was that students didn't show up. So we literally lost kids. We didn't know where they were, how they were. I could not tell you which of my kids are in high school currently, could not tell you where they've gone to high school. And I think kids just became, even the kids who were really passionate about their education sort of became bogged down. I call it like the quarantine blues, with just the increase of screen time. For them, screen time is like time to get on Snapchat and IG with their friends, and now it's school. And so for them, it was just like, I'm over it, and I'm worried, I'm scared. When I say things change, we as teachers and educators actually took a moment, we took a step before we went into watching the play and reading the play and doing that work. We just talked about the virus. Like, what is it? How do you get accurate information? Is TikTok a good source? I know the World Health Organization just joined TikTok, but is that a good source for news? How do you prevent yourself from like being the person that's currently refreshing to see the numbers? And like, how do you manage that emotionally, socially? And how do we as educators help our kids sort of process those feelings? Because they may not get the chance to do that because the people who have really been left out of this conversation, because assumedly the virus only affected adults, that's obviously a lie. Kids got affected too. Just having them be able to talk about it, you could tell kids wanted to talk about it. My god's kids, like my god's daughter and her siblings who are also here in Memphis, were calling me every day just to ask questions. Like I had to go find a St. Jude like coloring book about coronavirus that kind of made it like a kid friendly thing. So I think that everything stopped. That even though we were trying to have classes every day, the coronavirus was like the star of the show.
So when they went home in March, y'all didn't provide them with technology. Like that wasn't, I mean, obviously because of spring break, so y'all didn't know, but they weren't able to get technology either because it was just.
We did not foresee, and I don't think anybody in the education system foresaw that like that would be a thing, like they would need that. And so we started the effort in March to try to get tech. Like once we realized we were not coming back in person, and it's a lot of it is like your hands are tied, because no matter what you think you would do, until the governor makes a decision and therefore the like school board makes a decision, you're just there. You're literally just waiting. Like even now, we're supposed to go back like this January in person, but the school board was like, yeah, we're going to go back in January. And then the cases in Tennessee rose, and Tennessee became the worst place for coronavirus in the world. And then they're like, that's mostly East, but that's still Tennessee. So we're going to not go back in person. And so it's literally, you could go to bed thinking and expecting one thing and wake up and it's a completely different reality. So yeah, kids did not have tech, but as of like this semester, we have gotten that, like we've had drives for them to pick it up. Schools have ordered more tech, and even teachers have gotten some tech, but a lot of it has just been sort of like a guessing game and trying to figure out and go with the flow as much as possible. I'm frustrated as a teacher because I'm like, you guys could have planned this better, but there's also a part of me that knows I can't like really voice or vent that frustration, because could they really have planned it better? It's unpredictable. So
Yeah, I think you touched on an important point that people have said in previous interviews, but not like to the detail of what you've said, is that politics, like there are a lot of people saying pay attention to politics and education and just politics in general, but not the point that, well, the governor makes a decision. When the Shelby County can't make a decision until the governor says something, and we know Tennessee is not the most progressive place when they go further east from Memphis, and just probably Memphis and politics in Memphis in general. So waiting on, is it what, Bill Haslam, whoever the governor is of Tennessee, I have no idea. And then so that, I can see why that took so long to make stuff happen, because I imagine schools are like, well, we can't do anything till we get that thing. Once that is said, then we can do this next thing. But until that's said, our hands are tied. So that's a very interesting point to make.
Yeah. So Governor Lee, I think it's Lee now. Haslam, I think, is gone. But Lee, essentially, like as you said, is not progressive in his thoughts about the virus and how we should deal with it. Masks are not mandatory in public. That's all I'm going to say on that. They're encouraged, but they're not mandatory. And so like even our Shelby County School superintendent received like death threats when we were like one of the first counties to say like, no, wait, we're staying virtual. Like we're not putting our kids in danger. And the thing is, like Shelby County Schools serves like the Memphis area, but we also have municipalities like Germantown and Collierville who are in person, and they offer a virtual option, but kids go to school every day, like physically in present. And that's literally 10 minutes down the street from me.
Wait, how is that working? If Shelby County schools in charge over all of them?
No. So because they're municipalities, they have their own government. Okay. They can make a different decision from Shelby County proper. So think of it as like Memphis area is Shelby County, and then some part of the people who live in Shelby County fall under that Shelby County schools umbrella. However, your Bartletts, your Arlingtons, your Germantowns, your Colliervilles can, like those school systems can make separate decisions because they're their own, they have their own government, they have their own school board.
Got it.
But that's a very recent thing that's happened. Like before, they used to be part of, like, I think when we were in college, like right when we were in college, actually, they were part of the umbrella. But when Memphis City schools and Shelby County schools decided to merge, let's just say there might have been some racial tensions and or political and economic disparities that then led those municipalities to want to separate themselves from the herd and say, we're our own thing.
See, that's what I was like. I remember there was a big merge, so how did they become separate, not together? But now that's why I was confused. That makes more sense now.
Germantown said, we make our citizens pay their own taxes, therefore we shouldn't make their kids go to school with your kids. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's a very interesting situation. If you don't know about Memphis, Memphis is a majority black city, and Germantown is not, and neither is, I don't think, Collierville. I'm not sure about the rest of those East Memphis municipalities. Okay. So yeah, there's the underlying current of what's happening in Shelby County. So that's interesting to know. We'll get on that later. Go ahead.
I did want to make a point about that and just think about, like, so that's a very interesting, I don't want to like sweep that under the rug because it did kind of affect how the pandemic played out. So a lot of people have asked, like, how come the kids who live in these more privileged areas get in-person education and nothing's really changed for them, but the students and educators who live in struggling communities also like don't have that option at all. Additionally, every Collierville kid, I can say this with a certain, because again, my goddaughter is a Collierville kid and her siblings are as well. Every Collierville kid already has a personal device assigned to them and has always had a personal device assigned to them. So it wasn't difficult. Literally all they have to do is like, oh, you know, the iPad you always get on in class every day when you have like free time or whatever, just take that home with you. And now you're virtual. Versus in my situation, we have like a computer cart that we share for the entire grade level, or 2 computer carts. So that's 60 computers for like 100 and some kids. And that's like assuming that every one of those computers works. Not all the time. So it's like that, like economic disparity also presented challenges where it wasn't necessarily about the schools or neighborhood or community's willingness to provide like quality education for the kids. They just didn't have the money. Like not every like kindergartner was walking in with an iPad, which is what you'll see in the Colliervilles and the Germantowns. So.
Well, I'm just going to throw away my order of questions because I thought we were just getting into everything all in the mix, so it's fine. Let's speak of tech. So your kids get these computers, because I've heard of people whose schools, like you said, Collier had computers, so it's easy to just switch to virtual. It wasn't a problem. So thinking about giving kids tech at your school, how was the transition? How are they able to learn how to use computers if they weren't on computers all the time? How did that work for y'all?
So I'm owning my own. I thought I was tech savvy until I had to teach a bunch of 8th graders how to log into email or how to open up a new browser. And it's like, it's kind of sad, but also just, I guess it's empowering in a way, because it's like, oh, like now that I'm really aware of this, I'm not about to let my students suffer because of the way what they were born into. Like, I'm not going to let that be an excuse. So like, it's empowering in that way, but it's also very disheartening because like kids don't know how to use tech. Teachers don't know how to use tech. Family members don't know how to use tech. Therefore, we're all learning and we don't have the time to learn because we need to start school. So school didn't start again. Usually school starts the beginning of August for us. School didn't start again till September because so students got out in May, beginning of May, and school didn't start again until the end of August, which is like unheard of. So now the school year is extended for by a whole month. But I had to do a lot of videos where I would literally screen record myself telling kids how to do something as simple as logging into Schoology or logging into all these apps. And that's after having had no time myself to actually figure out how to use these apps. Because in order for them to be available for me to learn and like use that month before school started, they had to pay for it. It's like, do you waste all those resources paying for your school to use Schoology for a month when there are no kids actually in school? Or do you wait to like maybe a day or a week before, but that also limits the amount of time I have as an educator to get familiar with those platforms. And there's also the issue of what I see on Schoology is obviously not what students are going to see. It's a completely different user interface. So I don't know how to like I can't find the button. I'm like, I honestly don't know what to tell you because the buttons I see are not the buttons you see. Or if I'm like on Zoom and I want students to do a certain thing, I'm like, oh, I don't even have the participation or the like option to raise my hand. So I couldn't tell you what you need to do to raise your hand. So it's a lot of Googling. It's a lot of creating flyers and documents. And I'm fortunate that my 8th grade team is like, we're all very solutions oriented. So we all literally, one person would be like, oh, I made a little flyer about how to log in using your phone, because a lot of students were using phones because they didn't have computers. Or we have multiple sibling like families, and we can maybe give a computer to each family, but that means you now have a kindergartner, 3rd grader, a 6th grader, and an 8th grader trying to all use the same device. So we had like, okay, well, in the meantime, while we get more devices ordered and sent in, which shipping is not really working in the coronavirus pandemic. So whether you order it or not, you could order it in September and they won't come in again until like December. So it's one of those like blah, 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 blahs. So we actually just spent a lot of time making tutorials. I considered a YouTube career at one point because I was like, I'm actually doing really well at this. Like I should make a YouTube about how you can make a Peer Deck lesson. And I was like, yeah, it's too much. It's too much. But there was a lot of work. It was a lot of hours put into just teaching kids how to do something. And then once you did that, you're like, oh, I need to teach them actual like content. But you didn't have the time to say, let me do this first and then do like there was no, let me orient the kids and myself and then we go to content. It was happening in real time.
So what I'm hearing is that money. So you weren't able to access the programs because in August, because that's another month of licensing. So there's probably 20, at least, that's a low number, but at least probably 50 teachers in your charter network. So it's 50 licenses plus administrators.
Or like hundreds.
Yeah, what you said. And so you get access on like August 29th. School starts on September. I don't know where dates were, but September 5th, we'll say. So you got like a week to figure this out, to then get it to kids who then have to learn it. And this does not include any of your lessons that they have to learn in the next 3 months-ish, because December's not really a month in school. I mean, depends how your school schedule is.
Don't worry. It has to.
Just sounds like a lot to deal with. And this isn't even touching on the lessons that they're supposed to be learning to be up to par with their grade level. Would you say now that your school is one-to-one with tech, or are you guys still having some tech issues?
I think we're mostly one-to-one. The reality of that, though, differs because if a device breaks, then a kid is on their phone, or some of the devices, like I said, some of the devices were not working. So we might have given it to students, but that's anticipated that they would have issues like your camera is not on or blah, 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 blah. I think that efforts are still being made to fix that, but it's still pretty apparent. Like there is no, like in some school systems, even if the school can't provide a device, you can almost guarantee that the parent can purchase a device if necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And that like financial flexibility just doesn't exist in the community I work. So,
and let's not forget that some of the parents probably it's essential workers or just workers who lost jobs because of the pandemic. So that's also a strain.
Yeah. And I know that there's also like the additional stress of meals. Like you could depend on schools for meals. Now suddenly that's gone. And like they tried to fix that with like stipends for grocery shopping, or like you can come pick up meals. But even with the pickup, like one of the workers ended up having coronavirus. And so it was like, oh, I just picked up a meal from someone who had the virus. Like that's not ideal. So, I mean, I know we all order food and all that, but still not ideal.
Right.
Yeah, because then especially, so something else that I've noticed, and like, it's so, I don't know if you're going to ask about this, but like you get a glimpse into students' homes that's almost uncomfortable because you see everything. Like there's no barrier between like school, like you're literally in their living rooms, in their kitchens, in their bedrooms, and it becomes very apparent, like when there's, for instance, like a multi-family household and the kid can't even unmute just to answer a question because of just the noise. Not like a party or anything irresponsible, just general like noises that come with living. Like as a teacher, I do live in a household where my like sibling and my parents are still here, but like sometimes, like if my mom's on the phone, my students will be like, "I love your mom's accent," and I'm like, "Oh, you can hear her." Like hold on, and I'll like tell my mom, "Hey, can you keep it down?" But that's just like with 4 people, let alone multiple siblings, multiple adults, all living different lives and schedules, and you're just trying to be here on a computer and learn. So it's insane.
It sounds like a lot. And it made me think of, have you had to, have you witnessed or experienced students who are going through financial hardships? And are there ways that the school or the county / local government are things they're doing to help those families?
Yeah. So definitely yes to witnessing that. Um, as far as like what's being done, I've already talked a little bit about like the food banks and your ability to like pick up food and things like that. But other than like government assistance and like stipends, there's really nothing that can be done because a lot of the schools like financial money and capabilities have had to be like spent on tech. And tech isn't cheap. It wasn't like, the Microsofts and the Apple said, "Oh, it's a pandemic, let's give them a massive discount." No. You bought those devices, like you can tell if you like pay attention to those things, like they made some money in this situation. Like the Peer Decks, like the subscriptions, like you notice like a subscription went from like $10 a month to suddenly 50 or 100, and you're like, what just happened? Like you were free service until you have multiple users, econ class, the demand, so then the supply, and then the price. So it's just like sad because you want to do more, but you can't really. So like even I try in little ways. So if a kid has a birthday, I try to like send them a pizza, but I don't like do it like a personal pizza. I do like 1 or 2 large pizzas. That way it's like you can share with your siblings. Because I'm actually fortunate right now to teach a lot of the siblings of kids I had my first year of teaching or my second year of teaching. And so I'm teaching their younger siblings. And so I'm able to say, okay, I know what's going on and I kind of know your family already. And so while your parent is at work, here's at least an assurance that you're going to eat and not just like, eat junk food or snack. And it's kind of a sensitive topic because you don't want to overstep as an educator in your assumptions and or like actions, but you also want to take care of the kids. Like it's more than just teaching them a lesson. Um, just little things like that. And I think that like one of the things that has really affected them is like if they live in those multi-family households and someone contracts like coronavirus, like everyone's affected. Like I've seen students who have the virus, like and are in their households with the mask on, like sleepy or sick and still trying to learn. And that's inspiring, but also very scary to say like everyone in your household is currently sick and you're all anxious and worried and you still have to go to school because state laws, but it's insane. We don't mandate it, but truancy and all that.
So there's been no change in truancy laws or rules with the pandemic.
I honestly wouldn't know. I try not to get bogged down in the politics because then I wouldn't be a teacher. But from my like teacher experience, attendance has become more there's a new obsession with attendance that wasn't there for in person. So because like in person you can be like, oh, this person's here. But like before, I only had to take attendance at the beginning of the day, and then the office obviously catches people because there's a main office for students to stop before they can go to the class. So they can catch people as they come in. Now I'm having to take attendance for every class because a kid could come to the very first class and then not show up for the rest of the day. And it's like, did they learn anything? Versus like in person, they actually like are physically in the building. So you know that they're in class. With virtual learning, you have to literally like every hour check attendance, which as a teacher means as I'm trying to set up my Zoom PowerPoint presentation and answer student questions and like do the actual teaching, I'm also like, okay, let me take attendance on a separate app. And it's just, it can be a lot. I had to buy a monitor. Like I've never had needed an extra screen as much as I've been teaching or in grad school, but I had to purchase a monitor just to have the additional screen. So I use my cell phone, my laptop, my monitor, and my iPad just to be able to do all of the things I need to do.
So you have a little command center going on in your room.
Yep. I was like, listen, if there are any tech jobs hiring, I promise you all those skills, it's like proficiency with all these. I'm like, hey, look at me. I know how to do all of this. It's crazy. Mirroring screens and all that. I'm pretty good at it now.
Well, if you want to move into implementation specialty, that's probably something that you can do because you know how to use all the apps and you're just teaching other people how to use them. So that's just a quick if you're looking. I don't work in that, but I just figured I'd throw that out there.
Depends on the pay. Just kidding.
I mean,
but not kidding. I'm so serious.
I mean, you'd still be a teacher. So
yeah, it's like I need additional income. Teaching ain't it. There's not enough money.
So speaking of tech and your students, what did y'all do for access to Wi-Fi? Because we know that not all students have access to Wi-Fi.
Okay. Yeah, so that's something positive. Okay. Well, first, Xfinity, shout out to Comcast Xfinity, maybe, I don't know yet, has created mobile hotspots all over the city that are free and available to everyone. I don't know when that's going to end, but for the duration of the like pandemic so far, they've been available. That also affects my paid for service, but we're not going to get into that. Like we have Xfinity and we were experiencing terrible service. So like I couldn't even like get on a Zoom call and teach because it would literally just like shut down in the middle of me teaching. Great. It's so fun to like set everything up and be in the groove and it just goes boop, like that. But we do have MiFi devices that the school did spend a lot of money purchasing MiFi devices, which are portable Wi-Fi devices that you can deliver to the students who demonstrate that extreme need, who just like don't have it. Like there's no mobile hotspot, whatever. And as well as teachers too. And then you have like a login and you're able to access and type into that. So that's, again, like, so a lot of the money and resources has had to go into tech. Like there's no option. So there's that. But yeah.
And how are the students learning on tech? Do you think learning at the same pace? Are things slower? Are you having to switch up what you're teaching them because of the format? Like, how's that going for the students?
I think the issues and challenges I'm seeing are specific to the age group. I think that the maturity and discipline required to learn virtually just hasn't been developed in middle schoolers. So I think that affects learning in the sense that like, not necessarily the students aren't, my kids are geniuses. I'm just going to start there, but paying attention is harder. Zoom fatigue is a real thing. Like not even thinking that you need blue light glasses. Like right now I don't have my glasses on. I'm like, I should have worn them for this interview because like, I'm starting to feel a little tired and all that I'm doing is just sitting here talking on the computer, but just like being able to focus and being able to mentally discipline yourself to say, like, kids need that compartmentalizing, there we go. Or compartmentalization, there we go. Of like, this is school, this is home. Because for them to go straight from lesson to video games it's not healthy. Or like to go from like playing video games or like not even like the little things that you would normally do, like taking a shower. Like I'm a really big advocate of mental health. And it just reminds me of like what you would see from someone who's struggling with like depression, where they don't like do your normal routine, where they don't shower every day, where they don't, those sorts of things. If you take that away, especially for students who are learning to develop routines and manage routines, that affects their learning, that affects everything. Like it just affects your life and the quality of life. So what I've noticed is like, you'll be talking to a student and they're there, but then like sometimes you're like, hello, are you with me? And they're like not sleeping or anything. They're literally physically still staring at you, but they're not mentally like there. They're just like thinking about something else. So like we all daydream and we all drift. But when you're in person, you have that constant reminder of your surroundings. Like, oh, I can't do that. I'm right here in class. Like I can't, like I got to get back to it. But if your environment doesn't change, you can't do that as easily. I think would be the biggest effect. So I think like the biggest effect is not necessarily like students learning and their pace, but just like the mental, social, emotional toll it takes. Not having to, like when I survey my kids a lot now, a lot more than I used to. And when I say like, oh, how's it going? The answer is always like, oh, we love history and we like learning it, but like, I miss my friends. And you're like, you don't care about history, you don't care about math, you don't care about ELA if you don't have also the opportunity to vent with your friends about whatever is going on. Like you are more likely to be occupied with like, you know, the drama that somebody started on Snapchat when you haven't had the chance to talk about it with your friends, or TikTok. They don't use Snapchat anymore. I sound old now. Or TikTok, if you're like constantly just on the computer nonstop. We adjusted the schedule. We did a lot of things. So content wise, kids are not getting the same amount of knowledge at all. We are changing the schedule. Just got an email yesterday. Yay. We're changing the schedule so that can allow more consistency. But currently we have a schedule where students come to school on Monday and Wednesday or on Tuesday and Thursday. And then everybody comes on Fridays. So that means
come to school. Do you mean in person or come to the computer?
Like come to the computer.
Okay.
So that means I'm teaching 2 lessons, maybe 3 every week, as opposed to when we were in person, I was teaching 5 lessons every week. So you can just imagine what that does. Thankfully, I do teach history, so it's given me a chance to sort of decolonize my curriculum. So rather than teaching a lot of the problematic standards that idolize white supremacy, I get to say, oh, there's not enough time for that. Let's focus on this. So that's the plus side. But also kids are not getting as much content knowledge as they would have been.
And so kids are getting distracted. What are some tools or strategies you're using to keep them more engaged, since that's an issue now?
So I don't want to plug this app because like they need to run me some coins if I'm going to be doing an ad for them. But there are apps like Peer Deck, which is way more engaging. So it's basically like interactive PowerPoint slides. So rather than just like sitting there and watching a PowerPoint presentation and maybe writing down on pencil paper, the kids are literally moving through the slides with me, and they have different prompts they can answer in different parts of our presentation. So it's literally like more interactive, it's discussion based. And I've noticed kids respond really well to that. As far as engagement goes, like it's just like about the performance art part of teaching. People think teaching is like you make a lesson and then like you tell kids what the lesson is and they maybe have a discussion and that's it. Nah, you're on stage. Like as a teacher, you're like, it's literally like action and you're literally like, okay, and then this. And so something that's been really like, I'm very, very grateful for is my ability to tell stories. And I think that spans across all content areas. If you're a great storyteller, kids will be engaged. And so you mix the technology like Peer Deck with the actual like active teaching and you become, it's more entertainment. I think the like fancy word that's been thrown around right now is edutainment. I'm rolling my eyes, but it's more about entertainment art, right? That's coupled with like the learning. And then just like varying the way you assess students. So like not just saying, oh, let's just, write it down, like making discussion a part of their assessment. So a lot of the time in person, they give you physical papers, like this is my completed worksheet, and that's the evidence that they were with you in class. Whereas with tech and with virtual learning, like if they're dropping things in the chat or they are responding with like a plus sign or like reactions, or if they are coming off mute and saying what they think, that becomes more of like how the students engage. And then if I were given a tip, I guess, to like a teacher who's struggling, I would say the questions you ask, make them relevant, rather than focus on like the kids understand what I just taught. Think about real world application, they're called like enduring questions or essential questions. It's questions that anybody, no matter how much they know about the content, can answer. So should the president be elected? That's a question that any kid can get to. Or should we have equal representation or proportional representation? If we're going out for pizza, should everybody get a vote, or should, the girls get a vote and the guys get a vote? Or if you want to be not, cisgendered, could you say like, how do we determine this? How do we make decisions? When you ask kids that and then start talking about history, kids are already hooked with you. But that's a lot of pressure if you haven't been in there for 5 years and like gotten to learn some of these things. That's a lot of pressure if you're a first year teacher or a second year teacher or a 38th year teacher who doesn't know how to use tech. Like, you will literally, like, at least for me, feel inadequate or like inept when you're starting this new journey, because it's not the same. Like, you can't just take what you did in the classroom and make it like you can't do it. It's not the same. But yeah, so that's something that like I've always thought about, is like, how do I make things relevant to kids and fun so that they continually want to be there no matter what's going on, no matter the tech struggles, no matter the distractions. But still don't know yet. Working on it.
How many kids do you have in each class last semester, in the fall semester?
The semester ends on January 29th, but that's a whole nother.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
We're still in the semester. Just let that sink in. I know it feels like it's been 50 years. We have anywhere. So class sizes are supposed to be around 15, but some cohorts have like 19 or 20. And then some cohorts have only like 8, because it's really based on like, I do want to commend my school for doing a good job of like meeting kids and families where they are. So some kids don't even start school till 12 p.m., which means as an educator, I'm in there till 4 sometimes, because they get like 3 consistent hours, 3 to 4 hours consistently, rather than like the full 8 hours before. So they get 3 to 4 hours, and it just depends. I do know that because of like that, like, you can say there's supposed to be this many kids, but who actually shows up differs. We are in the works of like reshuffling students so that it's all this kind of student. And it's going to be a lot, but I think the max that we're trying to shoot for is like 20 to 25 kids, which I don't know. You probably have experience with this. I don't know if you've held any Zoom meetings where you were in charge of like, I don't know, multiple participants, but for me, 5 is my max of like when I figure I'm being efficient, because there's so much you will miss. Like, you're still trying to teach. You got to literally monitor. That's why you need multiple screens, all of the kids, and make sure you're checking the chat for questions, but also looking at the work they're actually doing. And it's just like 5 is a lot for me. 10 is manageable. 15 is okay, because then it's not boring and it's not the same kids over and over. 20, I don't know what that's going to be like, but I guess I'll find out in 24 hours.
You just made me have an epiphany of like, yo, I didn't manage this Zoom room for work, but I was like live tweeting it. But then I didn't realize I was made a host, so people could see that I was a host. So the questions came to me while I'm trying to listen to somebody talk and take notes. And this person keeps messaging me like, I don't have your answer. Please send this to this person. So now I'm being the conduit to get to this person and then respond back to that person what they said while trying to live tweet. And I'm like, I never thought about that in this way. Like, if you were a teacher and this is only 4 speakers, so it's not like 29 kids or 20 kids are trying to learn. Like, how are you able to take notes? Is there like an assistant teacher who's like making sure things are happening? Like, how do you, and I've asked this question, but now I have more of a grounding in the slightly of the experience. How are you managing to pay attention to the kids while teaching at the same time and someone being able to meet their needs?
It's a great question. I'll let you know when I got that answer. I'm just kidding. It's literally something as simple as sometimes having to get on the Zoom call with my phone and have 2 of me literally split myself in two. I'm still the same person, but literally just to make me feel better, because then it's not as overwhelming. Because it's like, oh, look, Mr. Miller number 2 can answer that question. All jokes aside, though that actually does happen. I'm being so serious. Something that's helped me is like being able to do breakout rooms. At times when it gets to be too much, being able to say, okay, I'll split the class in 2 or split into these groups. In some of the groups, I'll have student leaders who, because again, geniuses, some of the kids can actually teach my class if they wanted to. Like that's just, and they're also like nerds like me, so it works. So I'll put those kids sort of like in the same group of kids who might need more help. And then I'll literally hop from room to room and let them do a lot of like independent work and learning, because I strongly believe in that. But what's helped again is that Peer Deck app. They need to run me some coins. Peer Deck has really helped because I can literally see every kid's like response in one place and be able to like what we call show call, like highlight that response and say, oh, let's see what they did here. This is kind of the answer we're looking for. What can we do to make it better? Or this is completely wrong. Or what do you think about this? Is it wrong? Is it right? Being able to do that with Peer Deck has been phenomenal. But that comes at a cost. We have to purchase a subscription. Like I literally sent an email and was like, so are y'all gonna do this, or do I need to make plans to do this for myself, or what? And they're like, we'll look into it. Thankfully, we had the money to get it, which I think means like sucky Christmas gifts. But hey, we got Peer Deck, so it's good. It's great. Not to say that the gifts were sucky; they were from the heart. It was great. It's just not what we were used to. You know, it wasn't like a beautiful like blanket or hoodie. It was just little things, or $5 gift card to Starbucks. that said, I don't think that we are doing a good enough job. And that's me being like extremely critical and wanting to be a perfectionist. And I know that it's not like, I have to give myself grace and kind of be proud of myself for at least trying and continuing to come back every day. But it's not easy to do, because it's like it's not just about teaching the lesson, and like you have to also like be constantly aware of students' emotional like well-being. You have to be constantly aware of like phone messages from coming in about like whatever, like whether it's an email, like you'll get email from students, you'll get phone messages from students, you'll get phone messages from the principal, you get phone messages from the dean of students, like it's parents, and it's just all happening constantly. And when you're on break and you're like, oh, this is a time for me to refuel, you got to grade some papers or plan the next lesson. So it's been way more demanding, I think, than in person, because at least with in person, I know like if I print one set of materials and make copies of it, that's what we're using for the rest of the day. Like I don't have to worry about going to make a copy. Whereas with virtual, you have to reset the presentation all over again. The same Peer Deck can't be used because like, you have to do for each cohort. We actually have more classes than we normally do, because we used to have classes of 30, 35. Now we have like I said, 15 to 20. So we're having to do something like I teach the same lesson 8 times in a week. Like 55 minutes times 8. Monday, split across Monday and Tuesday. And then Wednesday and Thursday, I would do the same thing for a different lesson. And it becomes mundane. I struggle with engagement because by the time I've said it like the 50th time, I'm like, oh, God, I'm still doing the same conversation. And it's like, I'm supposed to be like, because I bring the energy and the kids match me, but that's really hard to do, whoever you are, if you've done it. Like even college professors don't have to do that. Like that's a lot of sections of one class, of one topic, of like I'm talking the exact same thing. So yeah.
So what has been a highlight of your semester?
The kids. It's always the kids for me. I'm really sad because these kids are like, I don't know. I think educators don't understand this. There's some kids that you just like connect with. Not that you can't make connections with all students and you shouldn't, but they're just some kids that it happens naturally. Like they like the same music as you, or they're interested in the same kind of topics, or they have the same sort of like similar personalities, or they're like super inquisitive. And this is like the first time in my 5 years that I vibed this much with kids, but I don't know if it's like real. You know, like when you're dating, you're like, I don't know if this is real because this is like on a virtual app. Like, I don't know your real personality until I meet you. That's how I feel with these kids. But I'm like, even if I met them in person, I just feel like it would be an amazing learning experience. But that's been robbed of us. But I definitely have to say the kids like bring their personality to the chat much more than I think they would have in person because kids are shy. But in chat, like you'll see kids be like, period, when somebody says something really cool or interesting about like protesters. And you're just like, I love it. This is amazing. This is authentic. This is great. So that's been really cool. Just the discussions and like the content itself not being so rigid and tied to like, expectations of you have to teach the kids about every single president and everything that they did. And it's like, no, you don't actually have to do that now. There's no like pressure of state testing and all that. That's been a highlight. That's been a joy of not having to have like, oh, you have to pass this stupid test that isn't really about learning and more about your ability to memorize historical facts. So if you have a terrible memory, you're going to fail no matter what. Like, it's less of that and more about how do I, as an educator, get to equip and empower my students to be effective leaders now and in the future? So how do we compare, like one of my favorite lessons ever was comparing the Black Lives Matter protesters to the colonial protesters during the Boston Tea Party. And like having kids be like, yeah, they should have protested. King George was a tyrant, blah, blah, blah. And then when we came to Black Lives Matter, you could hear them like believing that the cause was justified, but also being like, but they destroyed properties and some of those protesters weren't even Black. And just like being able to like go in history and then apply that to current day and actually have like the time to talk about it and not have the kids be like, we got to go to math, or like just being able to do that has been really fun for me this year. And, getting my tech skills up because apparently they weren't where I thought they would be. So I'm thinking of it, no matter how frustrating it is, it's a learning opportunity. I'm more marketable now. So, if you're looking to hire, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I got more skills so I can hopefully make some money and be able to pay my bills and student loans.
Everybody should listen to this and Cash App Chidimma student loan money.
But actually, it's hashtag $ Chronicles of Chi, CHI. Yeah.
We'll flash it on the screen when this comes up. Speaking of the protests and Black Lives Matter and police brutality and social justice, and you had this conversation with students, how did that come up? Did you have to have these conversations with your coworkers, with your managers? Like, how did that happen?
Okay, so at the height of it, we were out of school. It was break. But our CEO at least had I wouldn't say foresight as much as like, I don't know. She was able to say, let's have a community like town hall with the staff and talk about this and like give people the space to process and grieve or whatever else they needed. That was cool. I think that students were hungry and ready to talk about it because, again, when you're 12, 13, 14, adults don't really think that you have much to say or really care what you have to say. At least that was my experience growing up. So they were ready. They wanted to talk about it. And being a history teacher, I'm fortunate to be in like a content area where it naturally merges and students are like, okay, I want to talk about what's going on. And did you see the Soho Karen? Or did you like, they want to talk about that stuff. And so I get the like privilege and honor of trying to figure out how to incorporate that into the classroom. And it's been fun. As far as like helping shape their minds and help them deal with the trauma that comes from continuously being messaged that your life doesn't matter, something we've done and we made a commitment is like being a trauma sensitive school. And that's something that's new with this pandemic because it gave us time to think. And with the Black Lives Matter movement, we are a trauma sensitive school now, which means we literally, as educators, get training so that we can better help and respond to rather than add to the traumas our students face. Because I think that as educators, because we're also managers of a classroom, we tend to sort of sometimes put managing the classroom above the social emotional well-being of students. And it's not something that like it's done with any malice, but it's like you do it. Like whether if you're an effective manager, you're going to silence people, because a manager will say something like, "Oh, we don't have time for everybody to speak, so only 2 people can share because we need to move on," right? Whereas you can say, you know what? Let's create the opportunity and space so that if anybody wants to speak, they can. Let's create an opportunity where if people aren't vocal and are more introverted and want to just write out what they feel, whether for themselves or share it with people, that's an option. So that's something we do. We check in with students for at least 30 minutes every day. I have a wonderful homeroom, and we literally just check in, and it's not about learning or an objective. It's just, how are you? What's going on? What do you want to talk about? What do you need to uplift your spirit? And we also like, it's educative in the sense that we practice coping skills with them. So like we might do like listen to music. So we have like days of the week, like Tunes Thursday or Fun Friday, where we just have fun and play games online. Or we have Motivation Monday, where we like learn from the experience or inspired by other people. So we might like, or Worthy Wednesday, where we dive into different people. Like Issa Rae was one of my favorite Worthy Wednesdays, where we actually got to learn more about her life, and the kids were like, "Oh, I never really thought about her." Or we had Frankie Dakin, who was an alderman here in the area. We learned about him on a Wednesday, and then he is also a Rose alum. And that Friday, he came to talk to the kids about what it's like to be like in elected office and public office. And they were just like they were like, it was amazing. Like I've had my brother who's a nurse come talk to them about nursing. And like, because it's virtual, we have way more options, because like physically coming to a school building and talking to kids, as much as you want to do it, timing and scheduling is a challenge. But my computer is about to die. But being able to do that is just something that like has like made everything better. And just being able to check in with kids and do social emotional learning, that's been good. And I think that that's like a positive result of the Black Lives Matter movement, a positive result of the pandemic.
So you're talking about students' mental health. What are you doing to support your own mental health?
For my own mental health, therapy, more therapy. Before the pandemic, I'd already budgeted being able to provide therapy for as long as I need it, just because, again, mental health is important. If you are a teacher, you don't think you need therapy, do it anyway. Anyway, most insurance will give you at least 6 free sessions, whether it's all 6 with the same person or to shop around and find a person. Use it. It's free. It's there. If you don't use it, it literally goes to waste. Yeah, that's definitely been something I've been doing. And then I've also just like tried really hard to focus on what I like about the profession, because it's really easy. There's some stuff we haven't gotten to yet, but like being forced to be evaluated while you're trying to figure out virtual learning is sort of, in my opinion, it's disrespectful. And right now, I know that a lot of teachers, myself included, are feeling sort of as if their voice has been taken away, or because a lot of the decisions aren't like, we're not making like, it's our classroom, but we're just expected to like enact a policy rather than actually like, or like implement a policy rather than actually form the policy. So decisions are being made, and it's like the people making the decisions aren't the ones that are actually going to have to implement the decisions. So as a human being and as an educator, you feel as if your voice is being silenced or isn't being considered. So you have to do a lot on your own end just to affirm your self-existence. Like when I had to do self-evaluations, normally I'm very critical about myself and I'm always like, how can I get better? But I had to force myself almost to be like, what did you do that was boss? Like, what have you done that is just like unheard of and like shown your resilience throughout this pandemic and throughout virtual learning? And that's hard to do. And so I encourage educators, like, I actually started following a lot of educator empowerment accounts on IG so that while you're scrolling through all the normal muck of social media and all the other problematic things like, you know, the influencers with the perfect eyeshadow and makeup and skin, you can also be like, oh, here's a teacher who's struggling and here's an affirmation they used. Or, you know what, let me literally get on an IG live with a bunch of educators for Self-Care Sunday and force myself to take at least 1 to 2 hours where I just unwind and vent and or drink some wine or do whatever I need to do to literally take that time and take that break. Something else that's been like a blessing in disguise with this pandemic and with virtual learning has been my planning periods. And I don't mind saying this on camera, find me if you will. I don't do work on my planning periods anymore just because they are just like the 1 hour break I get in the day. Most of my planning periods is actually spent coaching other teachers or in meetings or whatever. So the ones that I have that are just mine and there's nothing like no standing meeting, I don't work. I could work and grade and all that, but I've had to learn that that's a healthy boundary that I need to set. If I'm on a computer from 9 a.m., sometimes 8, sometimes 8:30 a.m., all the way until 3 or 4 p.m., that hour is going to be spent eating food. When we were in person, lunch for me was barely microwaving my food and standing in a cafeteria and monitoring 100 and something eighth graders while they talked or whatever, and also trying to eat at the same time. That was lunch, and it was like 20 minutes. Now, lunch for me is getting off the computer, turning on some music, getting some like air fryer ingredients, popping the air fryer in, cooking some salmon and enjoying every single bite instead of rushing. Like those are things that I've had to like learn how to incorporate. And so it's different for every teacher. You might feel a lot of stress if you don't get to use that hour to do work. To each his or her own, their own. I personally have just like realized that that's a healthy boundary that I need to set for myself. I've also started trying the bedtime app where I literally do not disturb everything. Even on my computer while I'm teaching, I have do not disturb on so that I'm not getting emails that are jarring or have something that's going to make me mad. Then I take it out on the like none of that is happening because there's a difference between an email coming in and you're like, I'll look at that when I have the time to, versus like an administrator literally walking into your classroom in the middle of you teaching and imparting whatever BS they want to impart.
Okay. Good. Do all those things for yourself so you continue to help these students get through this ridiculous time and help yourself get through this time. And how has COVID impacted your family?
Man, we're about to get personal. I have 3 family members that are in healthcare. My mom is currently not working because she is immunocompromised. So probably not a good idea to risk that. For me personally, it's just meant, I actually had a sister and a brother who are both healthcare workers who have both had COVID and thankfully have survived and not had major symptoms. For me, it's just really been about being committed to social distancing, which is really hard because I'm an extrovert. And like, I'm not like out here in these streets trying to party like I was when I was 25, but I do enjoy like something about being able to just go out to a bar, not even drink, just like not even talk to anybody, but just being around people and noise is like soothing for me. And so that being taken away is just like, or even like with teaching, the act of like going to work and interacting with coworkers and being like, how's your baby? Like, let me see pictures and all of that. Like you can do that now, but by the time I've taught from 9 to whatever on camera, I don't even want to talk to my friends. So for me, it's just been like family wise, like that commitment to social distancing and to like staying at home for the safety of my family. I've had family members have to relocate because of COVID and just like come back home or whatever it is. All of that affects dynamics and like your ability to interact with each other. Like all the memes we see about being stuck in the same house year in and year out, like patience running out or just like being frustrated or not being able to see certain people. And all of that, I think, is something that's like an impact that's like everybody has felt in some way or another. So I don't think that's like unique to my family, but it has been difficult, especially with having family members who are healthcare workers, just like constantly worrying every single day. Like, I hope they're okay. Literally sending texts like, are you alive? And it's like, you normally check in with siblings and things like that. But now it's like more about, are you literally alive? And like, unfortunately, I actually just lost my doctor, my primary care physician, who's Nigerian. And like, I babysat his kids, everything. He actually just passed due to COVID. So it's actually very close to home on every level. I just had a student on Christmas Day lose his grandmother, who was his primary caretaker. And it's not a current student of mine, but like a former student of mine. And he like, reached out to let me know because like I developed a relationship 5 years ago with this family. And so it's just like, it's been tough. It's been rough. It's like not the best. If I would say anything about that, it would just be like, I understand more than anyone. Like, I'm not going to say more than you, but like, I completely empathize with wanting to respond, like a friend texting is like, oh, there's going to be this like party here, or Atlanta's still open because the pandemic. I get it. I do. But it's also selfish to make that decision to then, in the middle of a pandemic, go and potentially pass COVID around so that my sister or my brother who was just doing their job will then get sick because they're having to treat you because you're sick, or somebody you infected, or somebody. Like, it's just selfish. And I've kind of lost faith in humanity, to be honest, because I don't think people are going to listen. Like, I think everyone's like, oh, when it gets close to home, you'll listen. I know people who have been sick themselves and are still like, let's party, life as usual. And it's just sad that we as human beings care more about like selfish interests than we do about everybody else being able to live their lives. So,
Wow, a grandmother, a guardian of a student. Wow, your family physician, which obviously that's like, because you've been in Memphis your entire life. Well, most of your life, and I imagine he's been your doctor for a lot of your life. That's close. That's really close.
yeah.
And obviously, I know your siblings, so just a lot. Just wow. And thinking of your student who lost a grandmother, it also makes me think of what like the parent involvement of students this year. Like, how has that been for you as a teacher to get that buy-in from parents, or is it more difficult? Are they more involved this year? Like, how's that been for you?
So I'm not going to lie. I think when it comes to independent assignments, that's when we've seen the least parent buy-in, not because they don't want to be bought in, but because there's literally a barrier. Like, logging in and seeing your kid's grades requires the parent to log in to the student's computer, which again, we all know what it was like trying to get students to log in. So if you've ever had anyone older than 40, 45 and tried to teach them, maybe even 30, I'm gonna throw my group in there too, and try to teach them how to do some kind of fancy new feature on an app. J. Cole tweeted, how do I write a thread? That's all I'm going to say on that topic. If an intelligent man like Jermaine Lamar Cole needs help doing a Twitter thread, you can only imagine what it's like for adults, one, to have to admit that they need help. That's the first step. And two, then seek out that help and not feel, less than when they're like struggling to figure it out. So that's just been hard. Parents are always bought in because parents, like, contrary to, what statistics would like to tell you, parents care. It's just so much harder when there's that like technological, like, learning barrier, as well as demands physically of like having to go to work and then come back and now get on a computer to help your kid. Like, that goes, or like saying, or getting an email from the teacher saying your kid is missing these assignments, and all you can literally do is say, kid, have you done these assignments? And I'm actually speaking from the perspective of like, not a parent, but like someone who is a godparent and has like stepped in sometimes to help with my god kids, because their mom is now having to like help 4 kids at the same time in real time navigate school. Like, she has a set of twins and then like one older, younger, and it's like all elementary. So that's difficult. So I can't imagine, and like she's, you know, rather educated, they financially are secure and stable. So I can't imagine it's like helping one kid with homework every night versus like having all your kids in real time. And sometimes the parents aren't there because they're working. So sometimes it's an auntie or grandma who's stepping in. Sometimes it's a neighbor who's like, okay, well, you're gonna work, so I'll just like watch the kids while you guys are all at work. It's so much. It's so complex. It's so dynamic, and I think that it's unfair to say like parents aren't bought in as much as like it's more difficult for them to be involved in the way they would want to be. And yeah, it's more work on the teacher too, because there is nothing that we have so far, to my knowledge, that allows you to send an email updating individual personalized email updating about student progress that doesn't require you as a teacher to literally go through and do one kid at a time for 100 plus kids. Like, it doesn't exist.
So there's no automation of like, I can check Lamar and Lamar's parent, and this just sends like a generic, this is Lamar's grade right now. You don't have that system.
No, I have to figure out what his grade is. And then I can do the sending out to the parents. But like, as far as like, there's still a lot of work on my end, like manual work on my end, to like literally figure out what his grade is or run a report for him. And like, it's a lot. Yeah, that's a thing. I think so. Speaking about that, because I know I said like we're talking about parents. I honestly do think the tech industry isn't, at least the stuff that's available, isn't where it needs to be. I don't think tech and education have a working relationship. The fact that like Peer Deck is still in development phases, like Google Classroom is still there. A lot of the online, like people call them like, oh, we're already technological. All of that stuff isn't made to work with any other program. Like, they're operating independently, right? There's no syncing across platforms. And that creates so many issues. So like, for instance, Schoology is the one we use for like student assignments. There is no way for me as a teacher to upload a PDF that students can now like annotate and scribe on Schoology. So what that means is I have to download the PDF, convert each page to an image, resize the image to small enough, then upload the image. And even then, students can't like type text, anything. They have to literally just like underline the image, and that's it. Like, so how are kids supposed to like engage in something as critical as like reading and annotating and taking notes on what you're reading? Like, there's no working way that you can do that. Even like as adults, I would have to get an iPad, not a like MacBook, right? And I would have to purchase some sort of a pen or stylus to do it, right? So now imagine doing that with students who all have Chromebooks. It's a lot. It's a lot.
It is a lot. And you thinking about parent involvement and like y'all trying to get these reports to students and make sure students are all good and make sure students are still coming to class. When there's a student that's been absent or you've noticed something's going on at home, do you have to take that up? Do you take that to the administrator? Does your school have a social worker that handles that?
Yeah, so it's a mix of everybody. Obviously, teachers have a direct line, or more direct line, I should say. So we actually that's why attendance has become a thing now. So we do a lot of the like reporting part of it. Like, oh, I've noticed this kid hasn't been here for a few days, or so we do that. We have an attendance team that's also consistently making calls and checking in about that. Because it could be a number of things. It could be internet, it could be power, it could be anything really. Somebody's sick, like he broke the computer, whatever it is, they check in on that end. And then as a teacher, like I do, and anybody who works at our school, and now even students and parents can make referrals to social workers. So we are blessed to be a school that has two social workers and 2 social work interns, which is like, that's 4 people just focused on students and staff's like social emotional well-being. That's phenomenal. That's unheard of. So that's something cool. But I do have the option of like referring students and saying like, oh, I think the student would need more time. And because we've been checking in, as like I said, being a trauma sensitive school, we check in at least 30 minutes every day with the kids. We're also able to catch things there, like literally, like we ask, how are you, like on a scale of 1 to 10, or which emoji best represents you, or doing that has helped tremendously to at least say, okay, this student is struggling with grief, the student is struggling, and being able to then say, okay, social workers, how can we help? Or if you are emotionally full and you have the capability to say, how can I help? That's also an option. So again, you got to know yourself, you got to know your limits, got to know your boundaries, and then say, okay, how can I help? Or how can they help? Admin is part of the attendance team, so that's how they play a role. And they do a lot of phone calls and checking in with parents directly. Like, we don't see your student, we're just concerned. Is there anywhere we can help? So like we're making efforts. It's just different to see a kid physically crying than for them to just sit there and not, like, it almost like you have to have that trust, or the kid has to be comfortable enough to tell you, because if they never speak up, you will never know. And that's happened a few times too. So that's pretty rough as well. Whereas in person, you can't hide it. Like, if a teacher gives you a hug and you're like emotionally fragile, 9 times out of 10, it happens to me, you'll like start tearing up or be like, ooh, and you're like, what's going on? Versus like, if they're just sitting at a Zoom computer and God forbid they don't have the camera on, so you don't really see them, you have no idea. You're like kind of like blind. So yeah.
And when you have issues with students, or you learn, like you said, you and teachers pass along information that you've put together, how are teachers staying connected and creating some sort of a virtual teachers lounge?
Mm. So we hate Zoom. We hate it because, when you do something for work, it's no longer fun. Like, I remember a point where like the idea of like a group FaceTime with my friends, or like a Zoom with my friends, was like, I don't know, it was my jam. I was into it. And now I'm just like, please don't call me or text me. Just leave me alone. I'm tired of phones. I'm tired. But I think that like that like shared like camaraderie that comes from going through literal battle together is like pretty great. Shout out to my 8th grade team. They're literally texting me right now. We have a group chat. Thankfully, we're all iPhone users, so we like use that as a space to just sort of like talk to each other and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Or did you have this issue with this cohort today? Is it me or is it off? Like, just the ability to do that has been great. Or, hey, I'm using Peer Deck, and like, I am so lucky. I can't say this enough. I know schools operate where like every teacher is almost like their own person and they don't care. And this doesn't help because you literally are your own person in your own classroom. You can't even hear what the lesson is. Like, in person, I could tell you what they're doing in math because the 4 classrooms are right next to each other. So you can sometimes hear what's going on, or you can hear the kids. Or now it's just this, like, it's just the computer and me and the kids. We are still able to connect with each other and say like, oh, this is what I'm doing. Or, hey, we're taking a quiz in history class. Are you guys giving a quiz? Or I'm planning on giving a quiz, so we don't have the kids show up to school one day and have 10 quizzes. Like, we still do that. And I'm grateful for that, because that's one, comes from having worked together last year. Like, the majority of the team came back, and also just being friends. Like, I guess I can say her name. Sarah Kim, who went to Rhodes, is one of the teachers on my team. And the other teachers are people that I generally just like have built a connection with. So that's been fun. As far as school efforts, we have staff meetings, but it's not the same. We do still have professional development. And I would like to see, not to say it doesn't exist at all, but I would like to see more of the teachers lounge vibe and effect, because it's not as prevalent as it used to be right now in professional development. Because like, even if you have a PD or like a learning objective for the teachers, you have like the 10 or 15 minutes before it starts where everybody's checking in. That's not a thing now, because everybody's like, let's just get in this meeting and get out. Like, it's just like very iffy. There's no like shared experiences or best practices really. But as a department chair, I do get the opportunity to do that one-on-one with the teachers in my department. So that's kind of cool. But as far as I don't know. I think as a more experienced teacher, I'm sort of in a limbo. First year teachers get that like teachers lounge feel because everybody's like trying to help them. But I'm just like, they're like, oh, we trust that you know what you're doing. I'm like, but I'm literally still by myself figuring out virtual learning. But that's cool. I'm glad you have faith in me, but like that doesn't mean I don't need camaraderie. That's all that's great. And I will mention Clubhouse. There is literally a teachers lounge on Clubhouse, but it's not what I thought it would be. Shane needs to take over and make one. But I think that, like I said, IG and like being able or willing to step outside of what I consider my actual teachers lounge, like in person here at my school, and trying to think more of like an international, like global teachers lounge, and trying to find those few educators, not just like to network literally and connect with educators that outside of my school community are on the same wavelength as me. Because not everybody who works at your school missions and visions align with your missions and visions, despite the fact that your school might have a mission and vision. I'll say it again. You guys might have a mission and vision, and we all do our best to fit it, but you might have individual values and personal values that don't align with the personal values of people at your school. So trying to find and build a space for that would be great. So thanks for starting that off, Shane.
Yeah, so I'm glad you're ready to shoot the promo for the Teachers Lounge by Lunch Tray / by Shane, but we're going to get there. So those are all my questions that I have, but there are some Instagram submitted questions and fun questions. We're going to try to keep these short because we've been running for a minute, and I know you have work today, and I don't want to keep you longer than needed. So there are 9 Instagram questions and 16 fun questions, but those are like one-word answers. Okay. But it's up to you. This will all
Instagram questions? Is that what?
Yeah, I asked people for questions and people submitted, and they're actually really good. Like the first one, I was skeptical about, and it legitimately has been the most simple yet profound question to ask. And so, Jade from Rhodes College, I want to thank you for this question. Rhodes College has been well represented in this conversation. I did not think it would come up that much. I'm very glad that I wore this sweatshirt that I paid too much money for, but need to get the old logo before it was gone. So shout out to Rhodes. Not that person who hails from Rhodes who got a job she wasn't qualified for. But we'll go with the first question. Are you okay?
Yeah, I am.
Second question, how has the pandemic widened the opportunity gap for your students?
The fact that my students now all have technology or access to technology has definitely closed the achievement gap, but also widened it in the sense that like it just sort of illuminates the fact that there are barriers that we never considered, and that now we have to consider moving forward.
Gotcha. How can individuals help education? Individuals like myself, individuals like Ashton down the street, how can we help education? And that question is by Ashton, so. Say that one more time.
Pay us. That's it.
Run me my money, locate us where the money resides, all those things. That's how we can help. And I agree. But we don't pay you, so how can we help?
Advocate that we get more pay. Vote so that we get more pay. No, but honestly, I think that just volunteering as a mentor for classrooms is a really good way. Quick plug, most Fridays at 8:30, from 8:30 to 9 a.m. If you would like to tell a bunch of 8th graders about your career, your journey to that career, and just sort of tell them what it's like and give them that perspective, would really appreciate it. They love it. It's awesome. It's like real life, applicable, relevant stories that motivate and inspire. Would really love that. So I'll give Shane the link and he can.
And that is 8:30 Central Time, just so y'all know.
Yeah. Sorry, 8:30 a.m. Central. So if you're out west, it may not be ideal because that's like 5:30 in the morning. My bad.
Sacrifice. 30 minutes sacrifice. Wake up a little bit early, go back to sleep. It'll be fine. Chidimma, sign me up. I don't know what day. Sign me up. It's fine.
Oh, yeah, they do want to be a filmmaker, so.
I can discuss multiple careers. Just let me know. You know, I've done a little of a lot. So.
I apologize for putting you in a box, Jay. I know.
Don't put me in that box. I am in a circle. I don't know how that makes any difference, but whatever. So volunteer and advocate for teachers to be paid more. Next question. What have been the best tools you've used to support virtual learning?
I don't know if this is considered a tool, but just therapy and self-awareness would be the biggest one for both students and staff members. And then just tech-wise, honestly, it's not even Peer Deck. I thought I would say Peer Deck and have to have them pay me for advertising them. But it's probably like any calendar feature to just be organized. Like there's something very, very soothing about opening my computer, going to my calendar and just clicking and magically being on Zoom versus like, let me go find this email that had this Zoom link. That calendars, organization, but that's just a personal core value of mine. So you might think that that's dumb, but for me, a calendar.
So what I'm actually hearing is integration and automation, because what calendar are you using?
Google Calendar.
So you have a Zoom integration?
Yeah, I do.
And so the automation is that when you set up a Zoom meeting, it just boom, here, or you click, make it a Zoom meeting.
Or if you put an event on your Google Calendar and you put the location as a Zoom link, like the computer recognizes or the system recognizes, so I can just open up Zoom itself, the app on my phone, and just have it would be like, oh, here's an event you have, but this is not a Zoom meeting. And I'm like, you're right, because there's no link. And then it's like, oh, nope, I recognize the Zoom link. This is a Zoom meeting. Click here to join the meeting or click here to start the meeting.
I'm learning from teachers. Quick question. Do you have, so with things being all virtual now, are your is grading a lot easier because it's automated, like students turn in stuff and it's just graded?
No, it's so much harder because in person, I can literally like flip through papers and be like, okay. And then something as simple as, hey, kid, here are all these things I just graded. Can you record this in the grade sheet so I can then transfer it into the computer? It should be simple. It really should be simple. But like I've said, there's no way to like grade a bunch of papers without having to click back and then back. And it's not as easy.
Interesting.
So the systems themselves don't, like if it's a multiple choice question and you're like a math teacher, maybe where the answer is like 12 or 13 and it's like simple input, that's probably really like math teachers are probably having a ball right now. We humanities folks who have to have open responses and essays, and that's just a cluster. Fuck, no, it's not fun. I hate it. I hate grading. In fact, I'm now one of the teachers who's like, why do we need to grade as long as the kids learn the learning experience? I understand data. I'm not saying we shouldn't collect data. That's very important. You cannot teach effectively if you don't know where students are and how to help them get to where you want to get them to. But as far as like grades, I'm team no grades at this point because I'm like, it's just stress on me to have to do it. And it's the kids, like either they do it or they don't. And it's evident they don't do it if they can't talk to me in class or take a test. So I don't know. That's just me being salty and tired.
Okay. Okay. Did your school provide resources for anti-racism courses / curriculum?
Officially, no. But the network of people that we have are people who generally do that anyway. So yes, I know for a fact, I can only speak for history really, that all history classes are grounded now in decolonization and abolitionist teaching. So like over the summer, and I said no because over the summer I read the book Cultivating Genius by Gholdy Muhammad. Highly recommend, 10 out of 10 if you're an educator. Whatever content you teach, read it. And essentially it's like I chose or opted into that book club that was provided by somebody in my school, but only like 4 or 5 teachers opted into it.
Right, and your school did not provide that. It was like somebody took it upon themselves to create that, and they just happen to work at your school.
I would say the school provided it in the sense that these people were like network level employees. So like that is their job is to provide like learning opportunities and circles. But at the same time, one of the people no longer works at my school. So is it really a school initiative? I don't know. But there's that. I do know that at some point, I have to say this with a straight face, at some point, we had a anti-racism coalition geared specifically towards white staff members. It was like white PD basically, where it's like about understanding your whiteness and how that interacts or intersects with education and coworkers. And I don't know if they're still meeting because I think it got to be emotionally too much. I don't know. That's why I'm trying not to laugh. I don't know anything about that, but my first reaction when it was announced was to laugh, but then also be like, I don't know if this is really coalition building, if you're having to separate them out, but then also do Black people need a PD on anti-racism? It's a lot. And I don't know what the best way to do it would be. It did make me think about Ed Rose when we used to have the National Coalition Building Institute, where we had those like, you know what I'm talking about. Oh God, we need Sabrina. What was it called? It was literally like how to not be a trash human being and understand things from different perspectives. Tolerance. It was like tolerance focused kind of thing. But that's also problematic because if you're tolerating something, that means you're allowing the current system to exist, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know what the answer is, but right now, I don't think that that's a thing that people are thinking about.
Okay. And what has been an upside to online learning that couldn't happen in a school setting?
Being able to take a nap during and being able to just like take a break, like an actual break. Like teachers, we get planning breaks, blah, 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 but there's so much to do. And like that assumes that once you like are done with teaching a specific section, class is over. That is not true. Students might have more questions. Students might need more help. And that still happens virtually. But the ability to like, I don't know. I like working from home. I think I'm a work from home person. I think I've always been a work from home person, but I also miss kids. I don't know what that looks like for me in the future, but I'm literally looking at my bed right now, and the ability to like be emotionally exhausted, physically exhausted, and have like 20 minutes to just like sit in bed and do nothing. In building, like in person in the building, it's very rare to find a space where you're alone. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So like time alone has been really good for me in my mental health. So
you let me remember. You reminded me that I forgot to ask a question. COVID's happened. Pandemic is here. Your aspirations are to be a teacher. You might have more aspirations to be more than a teacher after start over. COVID's here, it's pandemic. You have the aspiration to be something. It could be further than what you are now. Have those aspirations changed because of the pandemic, and if so, how?
Yeah. I've kind of fallen out of love with teaching a little bit. And I'm almost like, instead of like, oh, these are all the things I love about my job, and like being the obnoxious teacher who, whenever you're having a conversation with them about anything, it somehow always goes back to their kids and their job. I've sort of become the like, I don't know yet. I'm still processing. So right now, if I can't say with certainty the way I've been able to say in January's past that, yep, I'm excited to come back for my next year. Like I'm not even thinking about next year. I'm in survival mode right now. So that would be the biggest thing. Like I'm going back to like, how do I just get through until Martin Luther King? And then how do I get through that stretch until spring break? That's unfortunately where I am right now.
What are your hopes for next semester or after break, since you're still in the same semester?
Next semester, I'm hoping that we get some of the kinks figured out with schedule. And I'm hoping and praying for consistency, because we're about to change the schedules again this week. And that just gives me a lot of anxiety, because it's like, I just spent all this time getting used to the one we had. And now classes are changing, schedules are changing, and got to relearn students and how they interact with each other. And it's just constant anxiety of teaching.
And are there plans for you to return to the classroom?
To be determined.
Got you. I had skipped a whole section of my own questions. I had to go back. So I've done all the Instagram questions. Those are my other questions. And I have these really short. They can be answered in one word or more. But I'll call them rapid fires. So what was your favorite subject in high school? Or in school, I'm sorry.
It's a mix between like history, so like world geography, all that, and psychology.
Mm-hmm. Your favorite dish to cook?
Some salmon. I'm just kidding. Air fryer salmon. Not even joking. Air fryer salmon is it.
You and this strong ale. Me and you we're gonna have at it. Your favorite restaurant in Memphis?
Ooh. Oh man. So before it would have been Soulfish.
Do it.
But now I don't know. I'm not really into fried fish right now. India Palace is another good one. And then there's one called Red Koi, which is like Japanese fusion. Really good as well.
Okay.
I've said like barbecue or soul food. I don't eat that. So
if you weren't a teacher, what would you be doing professionally?
pay me to write some books. Listen, if you're a TV show, anything, you need some scripts. Like if you pay me enough, I will sit in this bed and I will churn out the best stuff for you. But actually a writer. That's probably what I'm going to end up doing in life.
Here at Teachers Lounge, we may have some opportunities for you.
Hit me up. You know my number.
Best gift you've ever given or received?
Ooh, that's tough. You know, the best gifts I've received are the words of affirmation I constantly receive from my support system and my students. I'm a words of affirmation person. I like words.
Okay. If you could only eat one vegetable for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Like a vegetable?
Yeah.
Is a sweet potato a vegetable?
Next question is a potato a vegetable?
Wait, is it really?
I've been told it's a starch and not a vegetable. Someone else said it was a root vegetable. People have said potato if it is a vegetable. So it's up to you.
I like sweet potatoes, but if I had to pick another veggie, like an actual veggie, spinach. I love me some spinach.
Okay. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Absolutely. Is that a real question?
That's why we're friends. Because I think I started doing that in college, actually. So that's probably why we're friends.
Bruh, you don't remember us getting the little layer pizza, the cheese one with the pineapple on top, and then I sprinkle feta. I don't think you like it.
And yes, I remember that. I hate feta, and you're the reason I learned that I hate feta. Yes, that is where it started. Oh my God. Y'all, I'm gonna ask this pineapple on pizza question. It all started because of Chidimma. So blame her if you don't like pineapple on pizza.
Something's wrong with them. They're serial killers.
I started doing the Domino's 2 for $5.99 deal in Memphis. I'll never forget that. And I've literally 6 years, 7, however long ago that was.
Sounds so good. Let me go ahead and get
I still continue to do the $5.99 pizza deal at Domino's. Except in the Bay, it wasn't $5.99. But
it's $7.99 if you want to do a specialty pizza. I'm gonna do the 6-cheese Wisconsin pizza and sprinkle some pineapple on there. $7.99.
What is the most extreme thing you've ever done? And I feel like it's gonna be related to a concert or some kind of travel.
You mean like extreme?
Extreme could be bungee jumping. It could be going on a trip with no notice. It could be moving in with your significant other. It could be anything that you think is extreme.
I mean, there's a lot of things that are extreme in my life. I'm gonna have to say getting on a Chinatown bus in New York City to go to Fayetteville, North Carolina for J. Cole's homecoming show on the 2014 Forest Hill Drive tour with strangers that I'd never met a day in my life.
That is very Chidimma. What do you spend too much money on?
DoorDash, Amazon, makeup, Sephora. If you want to run me a Sephora gift card, yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't say concerts. Like pre-pandemic would have been concerts, I feel like.
I don't count. Okay. Honestly, if you looked at my bank account, then yes. Concerts, festivals, anything having to do with music and travel, probably merchandise. I spent a lot of money on Dreamville merchandise this Black Friday, whatever sale. But the plus side is I wasn't buying for myself. I have a few students who are also J. Cole fans. So I sent them a little, hey, congratulations on making all A's. Here's a little Dreamville sweatshirt kind of thing.
Nice. If you live by any mantras, what is one that you live by?
It gets better every day.
How would your best friends describe you in one word?
I don't know, Shane. How would they describe me? I don't know. Maybe Karen. I think I'm nice.
Say that again.
Caring.
Okay, so it sounded like you said Karen. I'm like, nobody's gonna describe you as a Karen.
Oh no. I mean, some people have said that I think honestly the one word that first came to mind was Nigerian because I am very Nigerian no matter how much I try to, fix that sometimes. Nah, I don't know. I guess, yeah, Karen, Nigerian. Motherly is another one I've gotten.
Mm-hmm.
You don't agree? What?
No, that was a very yes, duh. If you could recommend a book, a podcast, a TV series, or a movie, you could be all four or just one. What would it be?
Okay. Book. There's a book called The Grief Keeper. It's about immigrants from El Salvador seeking asylum, and there's some like LGBTQ and like some other like topics and trends mixed in. Phenomenal, like has to do with like mental health and like speculative fiction kind of thing. Really, really good. Read it in one day. You should definitely. Series, like TV series, I would have to say. For podcasts, I don't know. I was really into the Jesus and Jollof one with Lovey Ajayi and Yvonne Orji. For podcasts, for me, it needs to be super informative and like historical, or needs to be like comedy. Anything out. I don't like music podcasts because I get really irritated because the people think they're experts and they're saying stupid stuff and making lists. Anyway, I was thinking specifically about B Dot. I don't know if anybody's been paying attention.
What do you recommend that we listen to? No, what do you hate? What do you recommend?
I couldn't. I got into that thing. For TV, I want to say Queen's Gambit, but there are no black people in it. But it's so good. It's so good. I'm also watching Bridgerton. That's a Shonda Rhimes production. Bridgerton's pretty fun. Don't watch it if you are not into romance novels and or Korean dramas and or Gossip Girl, the TV show.
And a movie?
Ooh, the last movie I saw was Wonder Woman. I wouldn't really recommend it. It was okay. Oh, I saw Soul. I finally watched Soul, which is also just subpar okay. It was nice, but it wasn't. Watch it and tell me what you think.
Okay. What is your favorite movie?
Of all time?
Of all time.
Oh my God.
Or right now, or of yesterday, of 2 months ago, last year.
I like a lot of movies. That's hard. I can't do. That's like asking my favorite book or my favorite like song. That's impossible. But you know what? How about this? I would have to say the movie that I could watch over and over without ever being like annoyed or tired of it would have to be Departed.
Okay. Best vacation you've ever taken?
Lagos, Nigeria.
Okay. What is important for those who do not know you personally to know about you?
Words are a way to get a glimpse of someone's soul.
Earlier you said there's some things we hadn't discussed. Are there some things you still want to discuss in this interview?
Now I can't remember. Well, it has to do with like, I think we ended up talking about it. It has to do a little bit with just like feeling somehow like disempowered as a teacher and feeling like your voice is sort of being silenced and not heard. And I think I briefly mentioned like the expectation to have evaluations during this time. And when it's like, I understand how you're giving me feedback when you ain't ever taught virtually, but that's all I'm gonna say on that.
And is there anything else you'd like to add before we conclude this interview?
My fellow teachers, we can do this. It may not seem like it at times, but we are more than capable. We already have the schools and skill sets. We just need to figure out how to use them and utilize them effectively. And take care of yourself. Please go to therapy. If you can't afford it, holler at me. I'll pay for at least one session. That's how serious I am. Maybe only like 5 people though. Yeah, I can afford that. That's it.
So first 5 people who are educators to hit up Chidimma, she will cover one session for you at a therapist of her discretion / price point.
There we go.
And if people want to follow you, how can they do that?
I am at Chronicles of Chi on all social media for my personal stuff. But if you want to follow my teacher educator profile, I only have an IG. I refuse to do anything else. That's because that's where my kids are. It's engage with Miss Emelue.
And that is Emelue.
Yes. So at engage with Miss Emelue. I think that's it. We'll add that.
Yeah, I'll add all that in there. I just wanted you to say it. It's like kind of like a little, follow me on IG. I'm a rapper. I say what I say, but you can find me at.
Oh yeah, but no, Chronicles of Chi on everything. Clubhouse, Twitter, Cash App. Not Venmo yet, but we'll fix it. PayPal too. Yeah, we're gonna do that. But yeah, Chronicles of Chi. And then I am a writer and I love writing. And if you ever want to have intellectual discussions, Shane can tell you I'm the person to have those conversations that have nothing to do with what you're supposed to be doing. Hours and Buckman.
Which is why we became friends, because I wasn't doing no homework freshman year, and we were sitting there talking about things that were not school related. And
hey, that was school related. It was learning. We were learning.
It was social building, networking, and getting to know your fellow road student. I was rapping Chris Brown and Busta Rhymes. Anyway.
Or listening to Chitty Bang, or going on the like 50,000 Taco Bell run for no reason other than we just wanted to leave, or McDonald's.
Oh my God, and Wendy's. Oh my God, that lady at Wendy's. What was her? Remember we used to go to Wendy's, me, you, it used to be Reed for some random reason, and that lady had the biggest attitude. You could not ask for anything without, like, granted, I'm an adult now, so you don't have to be happy to work your job. That's fine. But when I tell you, this woman had the worst attitude I've ever had of anybody. And we went back all the time because Wendy's had the 99-cent deals.
There was a time where we tried to go on foot. I don't know if you were involved with that one, but we pulled up to the drive-thru on foot. So she probably was just sick and tired of college kids because we were doing the most. And
Memphis, surprisingly, has a lot of colleges. And I think that's probably one of very few Wendy's in Memphis, especially in that area.
Oh, no, there are a lot now. Well, that area, yeah. But there's a lot now over where I live. There's a Wendy's everywhere.
But I mean, like it was like the medical-ish district / Midtown. That's probably the only Wendy's over there.
Well, they started building more now that like McDonald's popped up everywhere. So basically it's like Wendy's, McDonald's, Walgreens, and Starbucks. Now CVS too, because they're trying to get in there. But those are the 4 things you can see in every corner in Memphis. Almost every corner, every 2 corners.
Well, Chidimma, it's been good. I want to say thank you for sitting down to the interview. Thank you for being a friend. As a teacher, you are enough. You are doing great. You will make it through the end of this semester and the beginning of next. After that, I can't guarantee nothing because I couldn't imagine doing this for a whole year. So, yeah, I'm just going to help. I wish the best for you for your future. Figuring out what you want to do next, if it isn't teaching or if it's somewhere in education in a different, I don't know. But again, I always say teachers are superheroes. Y'all do so much for the students, go above and beyond, and y'all are just great. Without y'all, we wouldn't have the leaders of today, as you said, or the leaders of tomorrow, because teachers are teaching the kids, and without teachers, kids would just be dumb. I said it, whatever. So thank you again. Thank you for this interview. Good luck. Because you start school soon tomorrow. I just don't know how.
Technically, I started in 45 minutes and then training and then teaching. But yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this. I don't know if I've ever told you this enough, but you were phenomenal. And I am honored and privileged to know you and have you as a friend. And don't forget me, when you become Shonda Rhimes, Issa Rae level, just remember the little people who were there shooting in the gym, as you said.
In the gym, yeah.
Just how Issa took her friends on a vacation to some islands. Like, I'm looking for that. I'll pay for some of it, but like,
I have my list of people that will be coming. When I make it. So I want to thank you for this. Don't hang up. I'm just gonna hit end on the meeting so we can stop the recording. So thank you again, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you for having me. You as well.